2023 wasn't a good year for the Carolina Panthers, but I'm trying to make 2024 a better one for myself. Get started on your resolutions with Factor so you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including keto options, calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. Skip that overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door, and they're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. Head to factormeals.com/C350 and use the promo code C350 to get 50% off. That's code C350 at factormeals.com/C350 to get 50% off.
Let's go, folks. Let's C3 Beat Check. We're on Wednesday nights. Actually, get together, catch up for the Carolina Panthers. This week, I've been anticipating this show. No, I am not. This is, and you don't get enough appreciation. David Newton, ESPN beat writer, the man of many questions, is his ear to the ground, and I'm the pulse, is here with us tonight. Cody, I've been excited about tonight for a minute.
I think that when we one day hoped to get into like we have tonight, man. Tonight we have Panthers beat reporter for ESPN. You love him. It's Dave Newton. BeatCheck. How are you?
I appreciate it. The fact that you say you know him, you love him. That may be a lot more. You'll hear from all the love out there. We have a job to do. We have to ask questions. Want to answer sometimes, and it ticks people off. It's a pleasure to be here.
I actually believe that, first, and I think unfairly, just because of the rap of being softballish, I think it's entirely like that. I do think Jared trolls on things where you probably had to keep in line enough to where you had to behave. But I think that you ask questions, and they might not think a lot of times we know they're not going to answer them. You got to do your due diligence. So are excited. I know I am. And when I of your work, it's not and that's and people don't get that they got fans. So it's a C3 thumbs up button. You like this content, big week to be catching up with David Newton, and another polarizing figure, or Cam Newton, another person I love. I must Fig Newton's Dave Newton.
Are you a fan as well?
Hell yeah.
My nickname way back in high school was Fig. So Isaac, I know it dates you guys came out, it seemed like 100 years ago, where they hang on television and doing the tricky part, going to school, and everybody's saying, do the tricky part, Fig, and I'm like,
well, Son I'm a fan of him too, and Rationale. And there hasn't been a lot of order in Carolina recently. So guys, you guys are in the chat room, Periscope, we're on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Hit us up on Twitter, everywhere you got. Hit the comments. Go ahead and let us this type of content here, because I'm just fan. Go ahead and start off right away. Let's jump into the football. The Darnold injury, struggled. Podcast Dave after the Houston game was not overwhelmed by the performance. Panthers pull out a third consecutive win. Overwhelmed because the first time in a long time I would place and beat the brakes off of a team. I thought the defense was just oppressing me more than I expected it to be at this point. It just seemed to be clicking after week 2 to beat down an inferior, and it was not a beat. In fact, it was your kind of luck moment. And so right away I was just of like how quality this, and after that, it started to fall apart. You can Dallas Cowboys game as a tough road game, a good team, but then after it's been a mess, and that the mess has been the quarterback, Sam, and now he's injured. What is going quarterback position and with Sam Darnold?
I was willing to give Sam every break, and he could possibly turn things around. And it looked like for the first, he was headed in the right direction. I know having McCaffrey, huge difference. His numbers were, gosh, like double or triple they were without him. So I in the corner, but then game by game, he just and you could just tell just his nervous feet in the pocket. He just never seemed comfortable back there. And I know the offense and that's contributed to it too. But back in all the old habits he had with the New York Jets and his bid. And I wrote earlier this before we found out that he had the shoulder injury that it was time to sit him in just permanently, because I just don't think he's the answer. I mean, I know the shoulder might have had a little bit to do with what happened on Sunday, but I really think that there's too much there. He was playing poorly before that, just making poor decisions. And decisions he made had a bigger factor than his shoulder. So where they turn from here is going to be interesting because their option. I think PJ Walker may go out there and win a few games, long-term answer. So they've got to find somebody to see out there or the trade route, because big class of quarterbacks out there I think can help them right away. And that's why they were looking at Deshaun Watson. Never wasn't the allegations against him came out, but that's the type quarterback they have. They have to have.
That the Darnold injury is enough to warrant IR or convenient enough to save organization.
I knew that was coming. It's
right. It's true.
Actually, he was asked. You could tell he was getting a little irritated with it, and took this paper and right near the end of the press conference and a little abruptly, but he left. And it was a little bit of both. I think he is injured.
Sure, and not a manufactured injury.
But I don't think it had to do with what happened on the field. And from that standpoint, it gives him an out to go ahead and down without having to totally embarrass him. I mean, they put a lot of faith, he and Scott Fitterer, and bringing this guy in, thinking he could be the guy that can get this thing going, and he hasn't been that. He really will be. So, yeah, and maybe it'll help him back and watching a little bit, because he never got that chance. Maybe that'll help him. I don't know. So we'll see. I mean, I just don't point where I'm just not sure that his career is salvageable, to be honest.
I got one more point, Cody, and I'm giving you the mic. Okay. And I want David, not theory. It's not a theory. It's my perception of is that I think that the Carolina Panthers have Matt Rhule comes in and it's like turn the page time, right? So they first separate him. Later we'll separate with Marty Herney, but then they Teddy Bridgewater. They recognize that that's not enough where they want to be as fast as they want to be. They turn Teddy Bridgewater. They try to take some stabs at some guy, not the Rams quarterback, Matt Stafford. Yeah. And then Watson's dream. You can't bring that in with the legacy of what's been going on with Jerry Richardson. I think that would be a nightmare. Anyway, so there's more swings and misses. And then they go and get what was perceived as a kind of low risk, high reward move, I think, with Sam Darnold, that turned out to be a low reward and far greater risk than anticipated. The team swings and misses again on the quarterback position. And right now, I think that they knew that trotting him out there was not going to work. Like you said in your article, it's time to sit him. And if not, it should have been time to sit him before. Maybe you shouldn't have even played him this last week anyway. Yep. I think they said this. We got to find, and you got a sore shoulder. Look at that MRI until you find a crack. I think there is an injury, but I think that this is something that somebody would return from, number one, under ideal circumstances, play through on other circumstances. And I think this is a way for the organization to save face on a mistake that was Sam Darnold, because if they bench him, that is them saying we got it wrong. Exactly. But if we move him to IR, it sucks. And it is what it is. I don't think he plays again for the Carolina Panthers, David.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think the truth lies probably somewhere in between what you're saying and what's going on here. Again, I haven't seen the MRI, just been told what was what they found. And as coaches like to say, I'm not a doctor, so I can't determine. But I've talked to I've talked to our medical expert, Stefania Bell, and she believes that there is an injury there, and that probably impacted him a little bit. But whether he needs to be out 4 to 6 weeks or could come back and play through this, I mean, I think that this is something probably in a week or two they could have let him play through it, at least after sitting for a week or two. So I think this is their time to at least try to see what they have in PJ. Maybe even bring him, let Barkley play a few snaps once he gets from the Titans. So I mean, just see what they've got out there and start moving forward, because their season kind of blew up when they lost to the Eagles, to the Giants, and
right. All games they should have won at that moment.
And Matt Rhule knew they should have won those games, and a lot of that was.
If you were a good team, it turns out they're not a good team.
Yeah, so
I want you to ask your medical expert. Ask your medical expert this. I've read just a few things on this injury, and everything I've read about this injury, they talk about the other injuries that go with it more than this injury. So they say, okay, you got this fracture. Well, that means that you also hurt your neck, your back, and this and that. I haven't heard any of that. I've just heard this partial fracture. I think they're going to trot him out with his arm in the sling for 2 weeks, and then we're never going to see Sam Darnold again.
Well, he was on the practice field today. He didn't have his arm in a sling. He was staying involved out there, so they're not trying to put that image out there for everybody. Okay. So he was there, and look, Sam, I have a lot of respect for Sam. I know I give him a hard time. He's not very exciting on the field or off the field. But I think he is a very dedicated guy, very hard worker. He really wants to succeed. I think his teammates actually like him a lot. He just, for something just missing there. And when he was talking a few weeks ago and he was saying about how, it just wasn't working here. And I'm like, well, I got to get better. I got to fix my mistakes. I'm like, but Sam, it really hasn't worked for 4 years. And how do you deal with that? And again, it was almost like that deer in the headlight look. And that's just, I'd like to see him just get ticked off, to be honest. And he can get ticked off at me, he can get ticked off at just the game, his performance, at himself. I don't know. I'd like to see him get angry a little bit. I know if Cam Newton, for example, when he had bad games, he would look like it was the end of the world for him, because he had such a high ceiling and where he wanted to be. And I know there's a good side to being level and not letting emotion get in there, but I just feel like he needs to be more emotional and show that. But I agree. I don't think he plays again this year. If he does, that means they just want to get another look at him, one more look at him to see what they got for next year. It's going to be really tough. I mean, unless they go out and pull off a few upsets, I mean, their season to me is pretty much over. I hate to be that harsh. I mean, but
you're right. No, that's actually just realistic. That's just real.
And Dave, I mean, really, you're echoing many of the things that Panther fans have been saying very loudly for a long time now. I wanted to turn your attention to something that happened sometime around the offseason. Teddy Bridgewater went on a podcast, and he basically alluded to the fact that the Panthers offense didn't really do a lot of drilling in the red zone. They were really kind of underprepared. And especially, fans were really hard on Teddy Bridgewater last year, myself included. I was not a fan. We weren't big fans of him. I mean, now but look, in light of how Sam's playing, some of us might even like to have him back. But my question to you is this. Do you think that maybe there was some smoke to that fire? And do you think that maybe, Matt Rhule is still being a relatively new NFL head coach, that maybe he's still kind of learning the better practices of an NFL practice schedule? And I just wanted to get your comments on that whole situation in general.
Well, first of all, I like Teddy a lot. I thought he was a guy that before the knee injury was playing fairly well, and he just didn't seem the same when he came back. And I know he made some critical mistakes in games, holding the ball where he was going over the top in a game they probably should have won. That was critical, but I thought they gave up on him too early. I really thought that was a guy that could have played this year and been successful. And he's showing he's went pretty good up at Denver. So whether he could have taken them to a Super Bowl, I don't know. But I think he's a guy that had some room to grow, and with the grew in this offense, I think it would be better. Whether he was totally accurate, yeah, I'm always one to believe where there's smoke, there's fire. So when he said that, raised eyebrows with me. The Panthers seem to be practicing a lot more red zone and 2-minute drills during training camp and during the season. So whether that was changed because of that or not, I'm not sure. I can't say, but I think it really got some attention there. And Joe Brady, their offense coordinator, he's 32 years old. I mean, he was 31 last year.
Yeah, he's 8 years younger than me.
He never called a complete game before he got to the NFL. So I think
Cody,
I think he's a guy that can be successful and maybe be brilliant in the league. But I think he's having to grow some too. And I think the fact that it took him a couple of games to get the message, hey, I've got to get the running game going. I think that was a signal that, hey, he needs to learn a little bit here about what it's going to take to win the NFL, because it's a lot tougher than it is down in college, where he could do some of the things he did at LSU for that 1 year. So I think it's just been a combination of a lot of things. Young staff, young team, but I do love the defense and the direction they're heading. I think by next year, I think they can be consistently a defense that's one of the best in the league. You add a few more pieces. They just got to rebuild this offense. So starting with the offensive line, I mean, the one thing Dave Gettleman I loved about him was his hog mollies. And when
but he didn't do it.
Yeah, well, he brought in some pretty good offense. The offensive line was pretty good. They just had some really bad luck at left tackle, especially since Jordan Gross left. I mean,
yeah,
is Byron Bell bad luck though? Or just a bad decision. Matt Khalil was a terrible,
players. I mean, that team. Remember, that team was pretty darn good in 2015, and it was good.
Michael Orr was good until once we had the concussion with Michael Orr. That's when it started.
That's to me the key. And Michael, I thought, was playing at a very high level. He was a guy. Was a first round draft pick. Beyond the blind side, the stuff that he didn't really like to talk about. He was a very good left tackle, and once he had that concussion and never came back, they've just been grasping ever since. And you've got to solidify that group. I mean, I think Matt Rhule understands that, and he's going to go out there and they're going to build through the draft and free agency on that offensive line next year. I thought they improved their depth this year to where they could handle some of the things that have happened. I didn't think they were great, but I thought they had raised their level a notch or two above where they were last year. But Cam Irving never really has performed the way I thought he would.
He's not even been the worst. This offensive line, though, has been horrendous. It's been the worst offensive line I think I've ever seen.
And that brings me to my next question, Dave. How did the offensive line get this bad? I mean, if they were trying to rejuvenate Sam Darnold's career and seeing how bad things went for him through 3 seasons up in New York, it would seem to me like if you're trying to get the best out of this young man and jumpstart his career, that you would afford him the protection that he didn't have with his former team. My question is, one, how did it get to be this bad? And then number 2, specifically, why haven't we seen more Brady Christensen and Deontay Brown this season? I feel as though Matt Rhule kind of has this Ron Rivera tendency where he has a real hesitancy towards playing some of the younger guys on the football team, almost even at a detriment to the team. So just your overall thought on the depth, the O-line, and how it got to be this bad.
Well, Deontay Brown's been hurt. He's coming off, looks set to come off the IR this week. So I think you'll see him work back in there. But they've had to get his weight issue, which was a problem in college, under control, where he could be a guy that could play every snap. Brady Christensen has just been average. I mean, maybe not quite even average. So that's why he's not in there. And that says something about the other guys, the fact that he's not even able to get on the field against guys that weren't playing very well either, besides Taylor Moton. So Cam Irving, I never thought I'd have said after he left the first time with the injury that they'd miss him, but they missed him because despite what others were in there, he was better than them. And, the guard position has been a mess. Now they've lost Matt Paradis, their best offensive line at center. So I mean, it's really a mess right there on the offensive line right now. And you look at the teams that win every year. 2015 is a great example. That offensive line stayed healthy the entire year, and there's a chemistry that's built there that helps them. The Falcons, the year they went to the Super Bowl, I don't think they lost a single offensive lineman that year. The Panthers, even back in 2003, the offensive line was a strength for that team, and mainly because they didn't get hurt and they could keep together. If you don't have that continuity, I think you can, even with not great players, if you get everybody there playing every single game, you can build continuity of working together. That's so critical on that offensive line, and they just haven't had an opportunity to do that because there've been so many players going in and out with injuries.
Kansas City's an example of that. Is such a good season that all of a sudden falls apart because of injury at the end. I mean, like late injuries. Everything was perfect until then. Let's stick on Matt Rhule and this coaching staff for a moment. Did we not I felt like everybody, we were so quick to ordain first Joe Brady, right? As everybody was like, he's the next wonder boy that's going to be Sean McVay or whatever it may be. And like you said, he had never even called a full game, that type of thing. It's like a inexperience there that we're all optimistic about it. Did we maybe overlook the challenges for college coaches coming into the NFL a little bit, or excuse them some with Matt Rhule? Because when we look down the roster of coaches on this team, it's not just Matt Rhule that's the college coach. Every single coach on this squad has very limited, not every, but a majority of them are inexperienced at the pro level. Do you think that is related to any of the challenges that the Panthers are facing?
Not a lot. I mean, because listen, Phil Snow, I've been more impressed with him than anybody on this.
Sure, he gets the pass.
He's a guy he's had NFL experience with the Lions, if that counts. I don't know, but I've been impressed with what they've done on the defensive side, and Joe Brady had a little bit of experience working with the Saints as an intern, basically, for a couple of years, so he had a little bit of knowledge there. And Matt Rhule, spent some time studying the game there and worked that 1 year with the Giants. I mean, there is a growth period there, but I think Matt Rhule has been preparing for this move for a long time and wanting to be in NFL. And he brought guys that were good teachers, and he believes that can work. I just think it takes a while to get people to buy into your system. And again, they put a lot of draft picks, a lot of deals to get that defense because he still believes the defense wins. And I think he's on the right track there. But the offense, they just haven't invested in the offensive line particularly. They've got plenty of skilled players to succeed, but they've got to put some draft picks, and because they're just not left tackles laying around out there. They had some guys that were high profile in free agency last year that they made runs at. They just weren't able to get them because those guys, they wanted to probably go to contenders where they could win then. And the Panthers weren't a team that was proven. So they've got to convince people to come here and play on the line and build that way. And that's got to happen through the draft. I mean, I think if you get a solid tackle, I go back to the 2003 Panthers, and they added Jordan Gross there. And, I feel like Brady Christensen's a little like that, although Jordan came and started at right tackle right away, then was able to move to the left side. They need to find some players like that can move right in and play, because if you look, their offensive line doesn't have a lot of high draft picks over there.
Yeah, and then looking forward in the future, we really don't have too many draft picks next year after some of the trades that Scott Fitterer has enacted too. We have, I think, one pick in the top 100 picks next year. So, yeah, not a whole lot of room to do it. I wanted to pivot the questioning to someone who you share a name with, who we briefly kind of touched on a little bit. Today, you asked about Cam Newton. And listen, Panther fans are in a frenzy right now, man. We've been through Teddy Bridgewater. Now Sam Darnold's looking absolutely terrible. And so many fans for so long have watched Cam Newton have to make do behind a subpar offensive line. There's even an argument to be made that when you factor in Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, that these might be some of the best weapons that Cam Newton ever had at his disposal if he were to be signed by the Panthers. Matt Rhule wasn't necessarily open to talking about Cam Newton specifically, but I want to ask you, did you think the Panthers signing Cam Newton is actually in the cards? Is there too much bad blood between them at this point? Or do you think that that could actually be something that not only Matt Rhule, but Scott Fitterer and Dave Tepper are interested in?
No, that's not going to happen. Look, I mean, I think Cam's the best quarterback the Panthers have ever had. If Cam was, 2013 or 14 or 15 Cam, healthy, young, mobile like he was then, yeah, you'd look at bringing him in. But again, he wouldn't be on the open market if he was that player. There's a reason he's not on a team right now because he's just not the player he once was. It's the reason Odell Beckham. I don't think Odell Beckham is a guy that's going to really do anything wherever he goes right now because I don't think he's as fast as he was a few years ago. He had, I think, a knee injury last year, so surgery. So he's just not where he is. So he can't be that player. Cam was great for the time he was here, but his time's come and gone. And he's got, I know you've heard it from people, but his personality is so big. And I'm not saying his ego's big. I think he does have a big ego, but I don't think that gets in the way. But his personality is so big. The way Matt Rhule wants to build this team, he doesn't want that big personality. He doesn't want that one person where all the focus. He wants it to be that team concept, and I don't think he feels like he can get that with Cam. And Cam, he's been humbled, I think, by what's happened, and maybe he could come in and do that. But I just don't think coming here is the right move. He needs to go to a team that's got a chance at making the playoffs and needs a spark right away. I just think coming in here it would be a Band-Aid. It wouldn't be anything that would really be building for the future. And this team needs to build for the future, not just a Band-Aid to get through this season.
When you look at Matt Rhule and the season, it's kind of like being a president of the United States. You walk in there and you look all young and stuff, and then you walk out the door and they're old as Obama looked like a child when he walked into the White House. He left looking like an old man. Matt Rhule, do you think that this season, how much is it wearing on him, do you see? And do you get a sense that for me, I thought there was no way he could not have a third season, but things are getting really, really bad. David, how is he handling it? And the rigors of kind of the attention of being the head of a professional football team.
Yeah, he's the least of my worries. I don't think he's ready to get a full head of gray hair, and I don't think David Tepper's going to give up on him after 2 seasons. I mean, he gave him a long-term deal. He knew that this was going to be, as Matt likes to call it, a process. Did they get a little antsy and think they could go out and start winning year 2 and maybe make the playoffs? I think the 3-0 start just kind of raised expectations too high. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, they're first 3 games, they faced 2 rookie quarterbacks. They caught the Saints at probably the most ideal time you could catch them, and the Saints aren't a great team this year either. I think he knew that this was a team that if Sam Darnold could play like he did the first 3 games, if the defense could turn things around and play and have that chemistry. That's what I said before the season. I think they had a lot of nice pieces on defense and they could be good maybe by the middle end of the season. They actually got good right away and had that chemistry right away. So that part was working and Sam was working. Even without McCaffrey, I thought it could have worked. But when Sam started making mistakes and poor decisions and they got away from the run game completely for a few games there, I think that just sort of left them in a very vulnerable position that which I don't think they can recover. Again, those early losses to teams like Philadelphia and the Giants, those were crucial. I mean, they were bad losses for a team that wants to make the playoffs. I know, heck, Jacksonville beats the Bills. I know it happens every week. There are upsets out there. Who knows? The Panthers may surprise and beat the Cardinals this week, but consistency is the one thing this program, this team has never had. I mean, I've covered them almost every year since the time they were formed, and they've never had back-to-back winning season. I think that speaks volumes to the one issue they've had in this organization.
I tell you, that Giants win, I've been going through it. I challenge anyone to go – the Giants lost, win by the Giants. I challenge anyone to go through the annuals of Carolina Panthers football and find a worse loss than that. Yeah, you might be able to find one that was more heartbreaking or something or meant more, but that was the worst performance in the history of the team, I think. Let's just stick with this. Is the question?
I interrupt you here. I covered a team that went a 1-15 back in 2001.
What was the game that year?
Ugly losses there. So yeah,
one was against the Patriots that year.
Team history.
We got beat by the Patriots, and maybe it's 26-3. I have 3 qualifications, Dave. I've been going through all the games. Here are my 3 qualifications for the worst loss ever. You have to score under 7 points. That's the first one, right? The next one would be the production of the team. Like, is ultimately, were you able to move the ball at all or anything like that? And the third is who you lost to. So if you lost to a team that was 12-4 and you got stomped, that's one thing. But we got stomped by a bad team. And I just say this is there's 3 games that stick out in my mind that kind of fall into the category. 1997 against the Denver Broncos, we gave up 2 punt returns in the first quarter. Shannon Sharp had 157 yards in the first half. One guy got left in a concussion. It was crazy. It was terrible. Chris Winkie threw 3 pick sixes in one game. That one gets up there. And then the other one that really qualifies in my mind, I was at in 2010, and it was a 34-3 loss against the Saints. But even then, there was some sort of bright spot on the team. It's like Clausen didn't turn it over. He just only threw 12 passes or something. It was just, anyway, speaking with the demeanor, the picture of Robbie Anderson, we've seen the Robbie Anderson stalking the sideline where he goes up the street and then back down the block, yelling at Sam Darnold. Frustration. Robbie has had a tough season in his own right this year. But my question to you is, if Matt Rhule is the guy to lead and weather a storm like this, how is the team's demeanor at this point? Because I feel like we got Rob, and maybe Robbie Anderson's just the emotional kid of the bunch. But I do feel like even the defense is starting to get fatigued by the efforts that are putting out there. We've heard the phrase lost the locker room in the past, right? That kind of, how is this team responding to Rhule's message of team, process, when it's not working out?
I'm going to say this. Now, the pandemic, the biggest impact it's had on people like me doing my job is we don't have open locker room anymore. So we're not able to go in and talk to players away from the other reporters, away from the team PR staff, and kind of get a feel for where things exactly are and develop those relationships where they're more open with us about how they feel. So we don't have to, ask them questions just on a podium. And it's tough to get what somebody really feels when you put them on a podium and ask questions. And that's one reason I like Hassan Reddick so much, because as he did I guess Sunday, when he started talking about the Mac Jones play with Brian Burns. You don't have many players on the team that will just say what they think. And we've missed that. So it's hard for me to really say exactly where this team is and with their attitude right now and how they feel about the coaching staff. It feels like it's okay. I don't feel like they're losing the locker room. I feel like they've got some strong leaders. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, he's a strong leader in there. He doesn't say a lot to the media, but he says a lot inside the locker room. So I don't think they've lost that. And I think, having players like him and Shaq Thompson in there, I think that's helped. But they still got a lot of young players. It's a young roster still. So, it should be expected for this team not to be consistent and great every week. So I wish I could tell you more about the vibe in the locker room or among the players, but it's just hard to get that feel, because we're not around them, kind of when they have their armor off or their guard off a little bit, as we've had for forever, it seems like.
Curveball question real quick. Now that you mentioned that up, do you foresee those coming back anytime soon? Or is this post-COVID world, has it just done away with the locker room interviews completely?
my fear is it's not coming back. And I think COVID's almost an excuse not to give us more access right now, because
I agree.
I mean, I know there's people that still have COVID. I mean, I know the locker room at the Panthers, I think they're close to 100%, if not 100% right now. They've had a few changes in personnel, so I can't tell you about new players that have come in, but I think that they like the control they have right now over the message. So that part of him bothers you a little bit, because it's really hard to get that pulse of a team when you're not in there and get to talk to those guys. I mean, sometimes I just go talk to the guys about, hey, what's life like, off the field, and what's like, what are you doing on Tuesdays when the rest of us are taking the time off, or the team has a day off, and getting to know them there and get a feel for them. And just, you don't see that. And even the things they have with their foundations and all, we don't get to see that even side of it, to get a little one-on-one there. So I've missed that terribly. It's been really hard to keep that pulse and get a feel. So you got to make it based off of snap judgments of what we see on the field and, on the podium.
Yeah, I wanted to turn our attention to PJ Walker now that Sam Darnold is going to be on IR for the next 4 to 6 weeks. There isn't a lot of faith in PJ Walker, considering some of his performances in the past. Although I will say, and we have him in our chat room all the time, there is a contingent of fans who really believe in PJ the Walker Wonder. So there are some fans that are excited for him. My question is, what should Panther fans expect? I mean, Matt Rhule and Joe Brady have now spent 2 years with him. They seem to feel comfortable with him. It feels as though Matt Barkley was brought in just because of the injury and as a just in case something happens to PJ. Is PJ ready to step in on short notice? And not to mention, we're about to go and play one of the hottest teams in football right now, in the Arizona Cardinals. Is PJ up to the task? And if not, that kind of seems like a doomsday scenario for Carolina.
Well, I will say this now. Remember, the Cardinals won last week without Kyler Murray. Cowboys won without Dak Prescott. There have been examples where backups have come in and done well this year. And my answer on that, what you just asked, basically, is it can't get worse. I just don't think I don't think PJ is going to be worse than what we've seen out of Sam out there. Yeah, he'll make a mistake, but he'll also make some big plays out there, and he'll stretch the field. He'll take some chances. I think he's going to get Robbie Anderson back on track a little bit. I think that's going to be a chemistry that's going to be redeveloped. He's going to have McCaffrey in there, which he didn't have last year when he faced the Lions. That's a positive. The fact that this offensive line is a little shaky, I think, with when he dances around back there, he's dancing around to make a play. I think Sam was dancing around to save his life if you keep from getting hurt out there, which he ultimately did anyway. So I like PJ. I think he's kind of a breath of fresh air. I was talking to June Jones. I don't know if you remember the June Jones days when he kind of turned the world upside down with his run and shoot offenses in college and in the pros and in the XFL, where he had when he had Walker there, and they were 5-0, and I think Walker 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So he's a guy that can make plays for you out there. And his problem is sometimes he tries to make too many and he makes mistakes. So they've got to, if they can cut down those mistakes, I think PJ is a guy that can help you win some games. I just don't think he's a long-term solution here for what they want to accomplish. Yeah. But
when you're a bubble player, though, you got to try to make the plays. You don't have the luxury. You don't have the luxury when you're a bubble player of getting 3 or 4 extra games that you don't deserve. Sam Darnold's got more games than he deserved. PJ has got no – and look, as they put him in under terrible circumstance, and not to say he's going to do great, but last year when he was in a better circumstance, he wasn't awful. I'm not saying he's going to be better than that, but bubble players have to come in and make their hay right away. The guys that have the high draft stock, they get the luxury of this. All right.
He did beat the Lions, by the way. I don't know if that really counts.
What's that?
He beat the Lions. I'm not sure if that really counts. And he did.
Yeah, true. They're bad.
He had 2 interceptions in the red zones. I mean,
Yeah. I know it started to get worse. He was feeling good in the beginning. It got too good to him towards the end.
I got one more question for David about the quarterback position, because you mentioned long term, and another real heated discussion that Panther fans have been having is whether or not we did the right thing with our first round draft pick in this most recent draft. And I mean, we really like J.C. Horn. Most fans do. We really think J.C. Horn's going to be a very good player for a long time to come. He was my favorite corner coming out of college. But knowing that Justin Fields was available to be picked, and then, I mean, even to go lesser than a quarterback, if you look at how Rashawn Slater, the left tackle for the Chargers, is playing right now, he's playing lights out football. These are the two names that have really been associated with the Panthers missing on those two guys, but especially Justin Fields, now that we're kind of seeing some of Sam Darnold's flaws kind of rear their ugly heads again. Do you believe that the Panthers organization was at any time ever high on Justin Fields as a player? And just outright, do you think they made a mistake in not drafting him?
I like JC. I like the pick. I mean, I actually had him taking a cornerback in the draft. I just had the wrong one. I think I had him taking the Virginia Tech corner. But JC, I think, is a guy that's going to make an impact. It was a shame he got hurt, because what he was doing on the field, they probably wouldn't have traded for Gilmore had JC continued to be in the lineup. So, and that's why they had to give up some draft picks elsewhere, even for CJ Henderson. So, was it the right pick? I mean, you can second guess all day. I mean, I'm not completely sold on Justin Fields. I think he's a guy that's got a chance to have a bright future. He's not a world beater yet. He's not going to be. Mac Jones, in a lot of ways, surprised me, because I think he fit more what they liked in a lot of ways. And Matt Rhule said he loved him, and he coached him at the Senior Bowl. I was down there watching him, and they loved the guy. So I can't say they made a mistake, but in hindsight, knowing what's going on with Sam, you could say that, because I think they truly believe that they had Sam Darnold, a guy that was a third pick of a draft a few years ago, that they could come in and make into a legitimate quarterback that could take them all the way. And I just think they were wrong.
That scares us. Being wrong consecutively. All right. We got to turn the tables a little bit. It's hard for, you got to wonder how a team that's struggling so bad right now, how they filter out the noise. Is that their social media is all in the presence. Robbie Anderson, who I love, is he blocked the guy. There was a guy who started a Twitter handle where he interpreted Robbie Anderson's tweets, and he wrote them, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was gorgeous. I mean, it was just beautiful.
Trying to figure out Sam tweets.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, and he just said them in a way that, and it was so funny. It was wonderful. But Robbie blocked him, and it was a big deal. And we're all like lobbying for him to unblock him. But the noise has got to be a lot for these coaches and these players. But the noise isn't limited to them alone. David, do you get affected by the noise of social media?
Not at all. Be honest.
How do you do it? Because they're hard on you, bro. They're hard on you.
You know what? Fans are fans. I remember way before social media was out there. I made a prediction when I was covering the South Carolina Gamecocks, and the fans came down on me so hard. I guess started getting death threats at home when I worked for the state paper in Columbia. They had a guy tried to physically get in the building to want to harm me. So I got an unlisted phone number, and thank God I had good security in the building, but you can't let those things bother you. I mean, you got to have a thick skin. I mean, it's just like Sam Darnold. I mean, he can't let the stuff that's been said about him bother him. If he does, he'd be a basket case out there. And so, yeah, I listen, but I don't, do I make mistakes occasionally? Yeah. Everybody does. So, but no, it doesn't bother me at all. You guys can keep pounding David Newton. It won't bother me at all.
It is crazy that, I mean, and this is where I think it's kind of messed up, is like everybody's like, fire this person, like that's what everybody goes to. And I think in some ways it's created more good things out of it. Cody, There is Newton. The Newtons are polarizing figures in Panther lore.
Only one of us left, okay. I survived a little bit.
That's right. You're the surviving Newton, man. And listen, we certainly thank you so much for coming on. We have 160 people watching right now. Give a thumbs up for Dave Newton coming on, being on the show.
I told
today.
you, a lot of people are ready for this, dude.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing this for a while, so we certainly appreciate you coming on and joining us tonight. I want to go back to something that you said earlier when you were talking about Sam Darnold. You said you wanted him to show some emotion, and you said, hell, I don't care if he even gets mad at me. I wonder do you sometimes take that approach with players and with coaches? It seems as though you're willing to ask tough questions because you don't really care too much if you piss someone off. And I think that's what a lot of people respect about you, is that you're willing to ask those kinds of questions, even if they might push a few buttons. Would you say that's true about your style of interviewing? And is that something that you try to do? And just basically is that something that you try and do when you ask questions?
No, I don't try to push their buttons. I try to ask questions I think that need to be answered. I try to ask things if I was a fan out there, but I'd want to know the answer to the things that I think really matter to the team. And, sometimes you test the water to see what their reaction is going to be. I pretty much know, that Christian McCaffrey is never going to say anything to offend anybody. I thought today he actually came as close as he did when I asked him about Mac Jones and the Brian Burns situation, what he thought about that. And his answer was that it was a little suspect to me, basically. And so, that's critical as you're going to get out of him. But I don't just say stuff to piss people off, because that's not my job. My job is just to ask the questions and get the answers. It's not to get out there and make speeches either. That drives me nuts when you get reporters out that just sometimes their question lasts like a minute and a half, and the answer comes out with a one-word response, because it's not about me. It's not about me. It's just about me asking the question and getting out of the way and letting them answer it. And that's kind of the way I've always seen it, because I'm just kind of the vehicle to kind of get the message out there. And when people don't give good answers, and sometimes I'll come back and ask it a different way, and that's when people think, hey, you know what? He's really trying to grade on this person. And it's really not the purpose. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what I want answered. And I will say this, and this is another thing that sort of changed with the pandemic, is because if I'm in a locker room and I'm talking to, just say, Sam Darnold, and I've asked him a question and I didn't get the answer, I could maybe leave, come back and ask it again when not everybody's around. But when we're asking questions on the podium, we don't know if we're going to get a second question sometimes. So I can't go out there and if I'm doing a long interview with somebody, I may throw out some really nice, gentle things to start off with and build up to the stuff that's tougher to talk about, whether it's good or bad. I mean, it might be good stuff, but it's tough to talk about. But we don't have that opportunity now. So we come off sometimes in particular, I feel like I come off really direct and people take offense to that. So, that's just.
No, we appreciate these questions. Look, a lot of fans do appreciate this, is because they are. I would say this is they're, like you said, not trying to push people's buttons, but a little gutsy. Like you said, test the waters on some things that need to be tested, and probably that they're going to give you a fake answer to. Like when you ask Joe Brady about the LSU question, what I want you to ask him next time is do you worry that you won't get offered the LSU job after this year? So I teach history at a community college. I'm a historian. I only look like this now because of COVID. And I turned 40 tomorrow. Tomorrow's my 40th birthday, so I'm in my midlife crisis. So I grew my hair out, and then I'm on with this podcast. I do the young stuff. But so I follow politics. I do this. Donald Trump was a mastermind of social media. He was. Is that whether we like him or not, and the good and different, this guy knew how to use social media in a way that benefited him. I thought that, and almost to the point where it was genius, but I almost felt like he stumbled into the genius. at times. Like it was like accidental genius. As someone who inverts names all the time, I invert names myself. Like my friend, I go on a radio station. I go on the local radio station once a week. We do football for an hour. We do picks. We do all this. I call him Jacoby Forsett. It's Jacoby Brissett. Everybody, I always do this. And I get my co-hosts help me out and they urge me along. Are any of the things that happen on social media with you, David, are they intentional?
No.
Are you stumbling into greatness?
No.
Okay. Tell me what you think about this. There's a cult following of you, by the way.
I wish I could talk politics, but ESPN discourages that.
So, don't do that.
I don't want to do that, but I love politics and follow it. But no, I don't do that. And sometimes here's what happens sometimes. And I use I guess last week I think I accidentally referred to
Phil Snow as Joe Brady.
Joe Brady, yeah, because I literally was running late, traffic or whatever. I got to the stadium. Joe was already going on the podium. I'm unpacking my bag.
Yeah.
I'm trying to send stuff out to Twitter, send stuff out to other avenues. I'm multitasking, and I just had a brain, you know what? And
it doesn't. And that happens to everybody. That happens to everybody. I hate how people act like that's an unforgiving thing.
And if people get upset about that, then let them be upset. I'm not going to worry about it because there are more important things in my life than worrying about a mistake on Twitter, to be honest. And I don't do it intentionally. I would love to be perfect out there. The Panthers would love to be perfect. Sam Darnold would love to be perfect. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes out there. But again, my job though is to just ask the questions and get the answers out there, and hopefully give you guys stories you'll read.
I was hoping it was not on purpose that your mistakes are on purpose, but it really stirs people's emotions like crazy. One of my most favorite moments, and it's the smallest thing. It wasn't even anything that needs to even be talked about, but you put up a tweet that said Christian McCaffrey first to arrive at training camp. And the picture for the blog was not Christian McCaffrey. And people went nutso. They were like, oh my God, fire David Newton, wrong person. And I thought this is like, I'm going to start doing this on my own podcast. I'm going to start putting Cody Lashney's face up and say, we got some basketball. Anyway.
I don't write the headlines.
You don't?
I don't pick the pictures that run with the story.
Okay.
Oh, tell us about that. What's the process? Like, what's the process then? Because you put out a ton of content.
We'll have a suggested headline. And the editor back at ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut, they put the headlines on the stories.
Oh, okay.
Occasionally, my suggested headline may be good enough where they say, we'll take it. And probably the greatest one that got me the most heat in the last whatever is the one when I guess David Tepper was talking, 3 or so years ago, and they were asking about Cam, what are you going to do, his shoulder, blah, blah, blah. And he said, he brought it up. He said, well, if it takes doing what they did with Andrew Luck, we'll give him the year off. And then somebody followed up with that and said, would you do that? He said, if that's what it took, we would. But the headline that somebody else wrote, and I'm not passing the blame because
No, right. It's you're part of the organization. It's part of the system.
The headline said Tepper suggests that the Panthers are going to sit Cam Newton. Well, Tepper wasn't suggesting that's what they were going to do. The headline was not right. So
wow. See, we didn't know that. See, we didn't know these things.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I called. I said, we got to change that. That's not right. It takes about 30 minutes in the process of going through the whole change process. And it got changed. But, by then, David Tepper's already mad at me, because he thought I wrote the headline. And I'm like, well, anyway, so that's just part of the inside of the business. And it's always been that way. And I think more writers have gotten in trouble about things they've had in a headline that they had no control over than anything.
Wow. I'm very curious. And that, you know what? That's why we ask these questions. My last question, I'll let Cody get his last question in. What questions, since you're the question asker, right? You're the one that asked in my opinion, at least in the last 2 years, has been asking the questions I want to know, or at least want someone to ask. What are we not asking you about this team? What are we, like, if you were going to, what are we not asking you that we should be thinking about?
You probably just danced around it. It's just what do you see as this team's future? I mean, I think you kind of hinted, is Matt Rhule in over his head? And I don't think he is at this point. I think will he have to make some changes, maybe even with his staff personnel during the off season? Probably so. But you see that, Ron Rivera was a veteran coach, and he had to make changes as time went by. Ron took over the play calling on defense at one time, if you recall. So I don't think the future is all doom and gloom like people are feeling right now, because they've lost 5 out of 6. So losing tends to make people a little more paranoid, or they just triggers reactions into the things that they normally wouldn't say. I'll give this is an example. Like when I was covering college football way back when, the Gamecocks started off 0-5, and there was this one woman that she would call me. I mean, she was like, twice my age, calling me, just harassing me all the time. You're horrible, blah, blah, blah. And then this young quarterback, long blonde hair, came in named Steve Tannehill. Won 5 out of the last 6 games. He was Sports Illustrated Rookie of the Year. And I ran into that woman during the offseason. She said, "You know what, David? You became a much better writer the second half of the season." And I said, "You think it had something to do with the fact that they won 5 of their last 6 games and they didn't lose them all?" And she said, "Well, that might have something to do with it." So, a lot of times when teams are losing, people want to blame the fans. That's why I don't pay attention to everything that's happening out there in social media. When teams start losing, people want to blame everybody, including the writers. We take the heat. The coaching staff takes the heat. Everybody's to blame, except sometimes what's really to blame. And what really to blame is this team is just young and growing and has a chance in the future, I think, to do well, but they're just not there yet. I see
it feels worse than 2012.
All right, come on. Who is this saying the Gamecocks never went 0-5? Come on.
Hey, Gamecocks fans are delusional. I'm a Clemson fan, so I know that firsthand how delusional they are.
This team feels worse than 2012, though. And the 2012 season was Ron Rivera's second season. There were calls at this point in the season for Ron Rivera's in over his head. He doesn't know what he's doing. Let's fire this fool. All of this. And then the next year we add the 2 pieces on the defensive tackle and we go 12-4 and have like one of the better defenses. Now this defense feels good, but it just really, we're kind of just so off put by the misses in free agency and the decision making of the direction that we feel like if it's all about process and building, right? Like one step forward. Last year, we were actually very pleased with the forward steps. It feels like we took steps back organizationally in the building process this year. And that, I think, is the scary part, where now we're starting to wonder, man, do these guys, maybe it's not, or maybe they don't know what they're doing with the personnel part. Maybe Joe Brady doesn't really have enough experience. And now we're asking these kind of like almost like existential questions about the team's direction, and that is unsettling. That's why I think people are like this, because it just feels funky right now that the offense is so bad, and they had a hand in it. That's the thing. It's not like, oh, we just got hurt, we got these injuries. They had a hand in it. And that's what the scary part is. All right, go Cody, and then let's let my man out of here.
Don't forget, you mentioned that 13 team, because they gone through Cam Newton's first 2 seasons losing record. I mean, Superman, but Superman couldn't get them to winning record his first 2 seasons. They started 1-3, I believe, in 2013, and then they caught fire. I mean, people were calling Ron's head. in 2013, and all of a sudden they won 7, 8, whatever in a row, and won 12-4 and won NFC South. So sometimes you just never know. But they had a quarterback then, and you saw the potential then. And then 2 years after that, Cam's the MVP. The team's in the Super Bowl. The problem for this team is they've not had a quarterback.
Or Jordan Gross.
And they don't have a quarterback right now that can take them to that level. And a lot of teams don't. I mean, you look around the league, I mean, there are a lot of bad teams out there, a lot of average teams out there. So 4-5 is while it may look dismal to them because that was a 3-0 start, there are a lot of teams in that same boat out there. So that's what the NFL wants. The NFL wants parity. They want upsets. They want this time of back and forth. So, you know, if they go out there and beat Arizona next week, everybody's going to start talking like, oh my gosh, we got a chance to make the playoffs again. But that's not realistic either.
Yeah. Again, Dave, we thank you so much for joining us tonight, man. This will be my final question for you. You mentioned earlier that David Tepper had gotten upset with you at one point or another. So my question to you is this. If you could ask David Tepper any question you wanted to at all right now, what would that question be for David Tepper? If you could ask him absolutely anything.
Don't know if I need that to get back to David Tepper right now, but I may not give you the question that I would want to ask him, but just how patient are you? Because I don't get the feeling you're very patient at all. You've been successful at every portion of your business, but you said when you first got the team, I'm going to be patient. I know it's going to take time. I've got Matt Rhule. It's going to take time. But somewhere between saying that and year 2 under Matt Rhule, seems like the patience is disappeared. So that's probably not the question I would ask him. There's some others I'd like to ask him, but
right.
Yeah,
that's what you're going to say for us.
I'm going to say that because I don't want him to know what's coming when I ask it.
Right. Have you heard of the revenge?
David Tepper watches this, by the way, though. It'd be cool if
he does. I bet you he does. I bet you he does more than somebody else. But anyway, have you heard of the Revenge Mansion?
No.
Oh, Google it. The Revenge Mansion, there's a story that surrounds David Tepper that when he worked for, I guess it was Goldman Sachs or whoever it was originally, and he was up and coming VP or under a VP, goes to then he's like, has a great couple of years and is supposed to get this kind of in line to be the next promotion guy. And he doesn't get it, and his boss kind of takes the credit for it or whatever.
No, I have heard that story.
And then the story goes that he leaves the company, goes and starts Appaloosa, and then he buys his old boss's house and has it torn down.
I did know that.
I want to know. That's what I want to be like. I want to be like this. Is first, should I short or should I buy, Tepper? And second, let's talk about this Revenge Mansion.
No, I just never heard that title. So I have heard that story. I've never heard of the Revenge Mansion. But by the way, you know, David Tepper bought John Fox's house at Ohio.
Did he?
And he's probably spent more, or I don't know the exact figure, but from somebody I've talked to said that he may have spent about as much trying to remodel it. So he's not tearing it down, but he's revamping it.
Same thing.
It cost him to buy it. So
is that Jerry Richardson's statue in the backyard? And like
I don't think so. And I don't think they're going to put it on the 14th screen over there that he overlooks. But yeah, I mean, people with a lot of money can afford to do those things. Bob McNair, when he was still alive and owned the Texans, I went to his house in Houston to do a story because he was a University of South Carolina graduate. So he was telling me how he bought the $1 million plus home next to him and tore it down because he wanted to put a garden over there. So when you got money, you can do anything.
Man, fantastic stuff. Again, we can't thank you enough. I mean, truly, we are fans of your work, and we are supporters. First of all, we're content supporters. We understand that you're out there pounding the streets, working hard, putting out and working a lot, man. I mean, I tell you, you're putting out stories all the time, keeping us informed in social media, and we appreciate it. You allow us to kind of live vicariously of people who get to have access So we thank you for your ample time tonight. I know we took way more than I probably implied to you. Hopefully we had a good enough time that maybe after this season, we try not to recycle our guests too much before they get mad at us, but maybe we could catch up with you another time and pick your brain.
Yep, we can do it. I really enjoyed it. I don't get the chance to do this to hear voices of the fans, and you guys, I guess, are fans. So
we don't try to be journalists.
It's interesting to hear that perspective too, because I do listen to the fans. I don't let social media bother me because I've been around it too long. It's not worth my hair for my age to still be mostly blonde.
It does. It looks good.
And Dave, listen, I can promise you, for whatever haters you had before this, after coming on the show tonight, I promise you've made some fans. Our chat room is.
I made one. I'm good. I made one. I'm not going to get fans. I just want people to read it and be, I hope, educated a little bit and learn something from what we put out there. Wish we could write more every day like we did in the early days of NFL Nation, where we had 3 or 4 stories a day. We're not doing that anymore, but I hope the stories we do put out there are at least quality enough where it informs you and lets you know a little more about what's going on out there.
Fantastic stuff, man. Thank you so much, and we'll catch up with you another time.
Have a good night. Appreciate it. Thanks up.
All right.
Thanks, David.
Wonderful. That's David Newton, folks, man. Fantastic. That's a big get for me. And I know that it sounds like I'm going crazy, but I told you, I've been telling you that he has been getting it done. And I've been saying for weeks, and people are like, oh no, David Newton, that's what they always try to say.
Pulse. Hey, listen, I was being honest.
Pulse, baby.
He made some fans here tonight. And listen, really good stuff from him too, man. Learning about, how just all the different things that go into writing a story and making a story and preparing a story. I know being an ESPN beat reporter certainly isn't an easy job to do. So yeah, fantastic stuff tonight. That was I think this is the most viewers we've ever had for a C3 beat check. So
definitely,
we're at 161 people watching right now. We definitely appreciate you all coming in and hanging out with us tonight and coming in for these questions. I think we did good, Tony. I think we had some legit questions.
I wanted to make sure that we tried to ask a David Newton question, not let my man just get the softballs only.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we did good.
Let's get out of here, Cody, and maybe circle back, and I'm going to bust your head on some debates in a second.
You wish. C3 family, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so that way you get updated every single time your boys go live. We're on more days than we aren't. We love you. Peace and love. Keep pounding. Until next time, keep pounding.